The Earthfire War. A soldier's accounting never thought I would see Earth become the most feared power in the galaxy. We had always been the small fish, the ones scrambling to catch up with the bigger alien civilizations. We were behind in technology, behind in politics, behind in everything that mattered. But then they made one terrible mistake that changed everything forever. The Jaddal Dominion bombed a civilian colony on Europa without any warning. 22,000 people died instantly, just like that. They were gone. My brother Miles was one of them. He worked as a transport engineer, building cargo drones and fixing navigation systems. He never hurt anyone in his life. When the news came through, showing pieces of human bodies floating above the ice and the communication tower still burning, I didn't cry or scream. I just sat there holding the dog tags he had given me years before, feeling something cold settle in my chest. I wasn't alone in this feeling. Across Earth, Luna, Mars, and the asteroid belt, every human understood what had happened. This wasn't an accident or collateral damage. It was a message from the Jaddal Dominion telling Earth to stay in its place. We heard the message loud and clear. Then we decided to answer. I was a major in the Terran Response Division. When the order came down from High Command, there was no red tape, no United Nations vote, no Galactic Council hearing. Just one simple line: initiate Operation Ashfall, no survivors. We weren't just going to hit back. We were going to humiliate them, break them completely, and make sure no alien power ever thought about touching Earth again. Our target was Jaddal Highest, their political and religious capital. We didn't arrive in fancy diplomatic ships. We dropped shock pods from orbit, each one carrying death and steel and fire. I led one of those pods with my unit of battle-hardened Marines, ex-convict pilots and cybernetic assassins. We didn't pray or talk much. We just checked our weapons and equipment, because when those pod doors opened, it wouldn't be war. It would be slaughter. We landed hard right in the main plaza of their city. Their buildings were beautiful, crystal towers, floating platforms, and ornate metal sculptures. But all I saw were targets. My boots hit the ground, my rifle came up, and I started painting their skyline with explosions. They never expected Earth to hit back like this. They thought we would beg, protest, or crawl to the Council for justice. But Earth was done playing the obedient species. This wasn't a battle. This was revenge shaped into bullets. They fought back with energy whips, mind-controlled technology, and drones. But we didn't care. We pushed forward street by street, killing everything that moved. Then we found their palace, the heart of their empire. Destroying it wasn't enough. We had to make it unforgettable. I climbed their sacred tower, 12 stories of gold alloy and ancient artifacts, and placed explosive charges along its spine. As I planted the last one, I looked out over the city, the fires, the fleeing civilians, the broken soldiers. My heart didn't skip a beat. My stomach didn't turn. They had turned us into monsters, and now they had to see what kind of monster they had made. I hit the detonator. The tower collapsed in front of the entire galaxy, broadcast live by Earth's hack communication drones. A holy site turned to rubble in seconds. When the dust settled, I stood at the center of it all, looking directly into the Council's orbital cameras. I said nothing. I just raised my rifle to the sky and dropped it. Message delivered. For once, the Council was silent. When I got back to the dropship, my hands were shaking. Not from fear. I had lost that back on Mars during the Cyrus Rebellion. This was something else. Something quieter. The kind of trembling you get when your soul doesn't quite know what it has done yet. My armor was scorched and soaked in alien blood. But the worst part was the silence. Even the Marines didn't say a word. Usually after a mission like this, you would hear soldiers talking, trading stories, laughing dark jokes, lighting cigarettes. Like war was just another job. Not this time. We had all watched a civilization's holy center crumble in fire and fury. We didn't feel proud. We felt dangerous. High Command called it a strategic success. I guess that sounds cleaner than genocide. But we knew what we had done. We didn't just strike back at a military base or take out command centers. We erased a symbol. A species like the Jaddal doesn't recover from something like that. Not culturally, not politically. That tower wasn't just a government headquarters. It was their god's voice, their sacred origin. And now it was ash, broadcast in high definition to every sector within range. The Council stayed silent. They didn't rush to condemn us or send diplomatic pressure. They didn't even issue a statement, because deep down they knew what this was. Earth had always been the underdog, the wild card, the species with too much emotion and too little control. Now they realized we weren't wild. We were angry. And that terrified them more than any weapon we had ever built. Back at Luna Command, I sat through for debriefs in 5 hours. Each one was colder than the last. No faces, just AI transcribers and high-ranking officers hiding behind screens, asking the same question over and over. Did you follow the rules of engagement? I almost laughed. Rules? There were no rules after Europa. After you kill 22,000 civilians and don't even bother denying it, you lose the right to cry about retaliation. 3 days later, I met with General Adrek. He looked like carved stone, with skin like old leather and a cybernetic eye that glowed faintly. He poured 2 glasses of synthetic bourbon and slid one across the table. You did good, son. More than good. I didn't answer, just sipped the drink and waited. He leaned back, eyes fixed on me. You know what you've done, don't you? I nodded, sent a message. No, he said. You changed the game. He wasn't wrong, because the retaliation wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. The Jaddle didn't respond. Publicly, their home world broadcast official mourning. Their diplomatic corps went dark. Their fleet scattered. Some ships pulled back, some stayed in place, and some simply disappeared. But intelligence reports started flooding in. Minor races in the Dominion were pulling out. There were civil uprisings, riots on satellite colonies, and religious factions splitting apart. We hadn't just crushed their capital. We had detonated the very idea of Jaddle supremacy. Suddenly, the Galactic Council, that slow-moving, centuries-old puppet show of self-important advanced species, realized they had a human problem. Not a military one, but a cultural one, because humans weren't just unpredictable anymore. We were willing to lose the moral high ground, willing to play dirty, willing to turn our grief into pure surgical violence. They didn't know how to deal with that. It didn't take long before Earth became the center of something darker. Colonies on the fringe started sending requests for Terran protection. Minor species that the Council had ignored for decades suddenly looked to Earth not as a rogue state, but as a shield. The kind of shield that bleeds, that bites back, that doesn't wait for permission to retaliate. I was sent to Praxis 4 to deal with what they called a small rebellion. In truth, it was a test. They wanted to see how far we would go, how deep Earth's brutality really ran, whether that rage was a one-time explosion or something sustainable. I failed that test in all the right ways. Praxis 4 was aligned with the Council, mostly trade ports and cultural centers. One of their species had a regional government dispute. A splinter group bombed a Council vessel and took credit. Naturally, they blamed Earth for inspiring violence, so they asked me to stabilize the region. What they really meant was kill the rebels and show everyone that Earth doesn't protect terrorists. Fine, but I didn't play it their way. I tracked down the splinter cell and took out their leader with a surgical strike, clean, precise, no civilian casualties. I even left one of their temples standing against orders, because I knew what they were trying to make me do. They wanted me to level everything, go full brutality again, to give the Council a reason to label Earth as unhinged. But Earth wasn't unhinged. We were evolving. General Adrek called me 2 days later. Why didn't you wipe out the district? I sipped my drink. Because it wasn't about the mission. Explain. I've already shown them what we can do. Now I want them to fear what we might do. He was silent for a long time. Then he said, you just bought Earth more power than 1,000 ships ever could. But power comes with a price. The Council began quiet negotiations behind closed doors. No press. No AI transcripts. They offered concessions, trade routes, technology, sharing, even a permanent Earth seat on the outer ring. We said no. Earth didn't want a seat at the table. We wanted to flip the table. While diplomats talked and ambassadors smiled, we started building something darker under Luna's surface. A fleet, not like before. Not clunky, outdated Terran destroyers. These were ghost ships with no identification, no nation tags. They were designed to operate outside the Geneva Rework Accords, invisible in Council space, untraceable and disposable. The unofficial name was the Burn Fleet, and I was chosen to lead it. Some men build empires, others burn them down. I was never meant to be a hero. I wasn't bred for diplomacy or decorated with medals. I was a soldier, a killer, the kind you put in a black ship when you don't want to be polite anymore. We didn't wear flags. We didn't ask questions. Our orders were simple. If Earth is touched again, make sure they feel it forever. The Burn Fleet operated in silence, orbiting in the outer darkness, running simulations and targeting possible Council weak spots. We knew where every fuel line crossed, where every AI relay station was powered. If war came again, we wouldn't send troops. We would shut the galaxy off, one star at a time. That was the power Earth had now. Not just force, but fear. 1 year after Europa, I visited the site. They never rebuilt it. They couldn't. The ice still shimmered with the residue of plasma burns. Some of the old debris floated lazily, untouched. Memorial flags whipped in the wind, planted by families who had nothing else to bury. I stood there for a long time alone, with no armor and no rifle. Just me and the ghost of a brother I would never get back. Miles would have hated what I became, but he would have understood why I did it. Because the galaxy didn't give us peace. It gave us pain, and we learned how to weaponize it. The Council remained silent. No sanctions. No threats. No declarations, just fear. That's what Earth became, not a member of the Galactic Order, but its reckoning. Power changes things, but not in the way people fantasize about with cheers and parades and some noble rise to greatness. That's the story they sell in recruitment posters. The real change is quieter. It creeps into rooms where trust used to live. It poisons the chain of command. It makes every handshake feel like it hides a blade. And Earth had never held this much power before. We weren't built for it. We were built from war, scarcity, and loss. Give a species like ours too much authority, and we don't become rulers. We become threats. After Europa and the Burn Fleet formation, Earth became untouchable. No species in the Galactic Council dared issue so much as a public criticism. Trade shifted. Borders blurred. Even alien smugglers started whispering about human space with hesitation, like it meant something sacred and cursed. But power doesn't just attract fear. It invites betrayal. And it came from the place I trusted most, home. The first sign was small, a black code signature embedded in one of our fleet ghost drive algorithms. It was subtle and elegant, could have passed for a corruption artifact or a lazy maintenance patch, but it wasn't. It was a tap. Someone had fed tracking data to the Council, or worse, to one of its proxy states. I found it by accident during a routine system check. I had seen code like this before, just not from Earth. The Jaddal used code like this, so did the Tari, Council servants with long memories and sharp knives. I brought it to command immediately. They told me to bury it. General Adrek was different this time, not just older and harder, but detached. When I sat in his office and explained the breach, he didn't even blink. It's handled, he said. Handled, I snapped. It's internal sabotage. Someone fed our fleet data to a foreign power. It's been taken care of. By who? He looked at me dead on. Not your concern, Major. That was when I knew it wasn't some outsider. It was us. A week later, my top communications officer, Urin, vanished. No record of leave, no farewell. Just gone. 2 days after that, 3 files in my Burn Fleet strategic map were deleted, not corrupted, but erased by someone with upper-tier access. Then my access to the fleet manifest was revoked. That's when I stopped asking for permission. Earth was being gutted from the inside. Quietly, efficiently, not with bullets or bombs, but with redirections, silences, classified meetings I wasn't invited to. Someone inside Earth Command had decided to play politics. They wanted Council favor, not war. Not dominance, just a seat at the same table as the tyrants who murdered our people. And me? I was the inconvenient truth. The soldier who struck back too hard. The weapon who wouldn't play nice. They couldn't kill me directly. I was too visible, too public. But they could isolate me, strip my authority, and drown me in silence and bureaucracy until I became nothing more than a bitter relic. But they made one mistake. They didn't erase the men who still followed me. There were dozens, soldiers, pilots, ghost ship technicians, analysts, and engineers, men who had burned with me on Praxis, who had dropped pods on the Jaddal nest, who had built kill switches into fleet code just in case this day ever came. I called them in, not with orders or protocol, but with truth. There's a traitor in Earth Command, someone feeding intelligence to the Council. They want to end the Burn Fleet, and they're not going to ask us nicely. Nobody left. Nobody even flinched. They just asked where to begin. The first stop was simple. We infiltrated Relay Station 9X, buried deep under Earth's equator. That's where outgoing fleet telemetry was routed, cleaned, and masked before heading to Luna or Mars. Except someone had added a new protocol, a secondary path, hidden and masked with code signatures that looked human, but weren't. Inside, we found the smoking gun, a relay beacon tuned to Council bandwidth. Whoever set it up hadn't even masked the origin key. It was stamped from Office 74, Earth Diplomatic Services, the same department tasked with negotiating Earth's seat on the Council. They weren't just leaking data. They were begging for entry, offering up our fleet, our tactics, our coordinates as trade for peace, for status, for a chair at their table. I confronted Adrek one last time. This time there were no drinks, no nods. Just the two of us in his private bunker beneath the Terran Defense Corps. He was already waiting, eyes hollow and tired. I know why you're here. I dropped the drive on his desk. The beacon data, the erased manifest logs, Uran's last encrypted message. You sold us out. He didn't argue or explain, just stared. Why? I asked. Because we were becoming them, he muttered. You think vengeance makes us strong. It just makes us like them. I stepped forward, fists tight. They murdered civilians, and we wiped out cities because they started it. That's what every monster says. He looked up, voice shaking, but firm. Earth's future isn't in terror. It's in acceptance. I laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was pathetic. You don't want acceptance. You want permission. You want to be led into their clubs, shake their hands, wear their robes like that makes you civilized. But they'll never accept. US because we made them afraid. He didn't blink. You've made us worse. No, I said, voice low. I made sure no one touches Earth again. And I walked out. Didn't look back. The burn fleet went dark that night. All 11 ships. Ghost mode. Communication blackout, no pings, no trace. We cut ties with Earth Command, erased their overrides. Burned the bridge behind us. We weren't rogue. We were correction. Because Earth was never supposed to be part of the Galactic Order. We were the reason it ends. 2 weeks later, the Tari attacked New Odessa, a border colony that was lightly defended and mostly populated by scientists and terraformers. No real tactical value, but full of humans. It was retaliation, not for anything we had done, but for what we might do. They feared the burn fleet had gone too far, so they struck first. 6,000 dead, children among them. No warning, just ashen screams. The council denied involvement, of course. But the beacon trail led straight to a Tari command frigate, council registered. That was their second mistake. I broadcast a single message across all sectors. You hit civilians again. You hit children. This time, we're not bombing temples or towers. We're coming for your thrones, your cradles, your gods. This time we end. You. The burn fleet mobilized. And the war truly began. War isn't glorious. It's not banners flapping in the wind or speeches screamed over the noise of charging boots. War. Real war is a quiet decision made by angry men who have already lost too much. The war one waged on Tari Prime wasn't for justice. It was punishment. They hit New Odessa like cowards. Dropped a seismic disruptor into the core of the colony. No combat, no engagement. Just shock waves that tore apart buildings, split the ground, and turned homes into craters. When we recovered, the bodies, most didn't have faces anymore. The youngest was 5. I didn't cry. I hadn't done that in years. But I stood in the ruins with my squad, looking down at what was left of a mother cradling her son. And I felt that old, cold silence. Again, the one I hadn't felt since Europa. The burn fleet was built for this moment, not for negotiations or warnings, but for elimination. We didn't go in loud. We ghosted in with 11 ships. Silent drives, black stealth plating, no lights. We warped into Tari airspace through a dark node. One of a dozen back doors Earth had built when the Council laughed at our early technology. Tari Prime was a fortress with 4 moons, an interstellar defense grid, and a planetary shield rumored to be second only to the Council cores. They thought it made them untouchable. We made it their coffin. First thing we hit was their orbital defense hub, Carthel Spire. We didn't fire missiles. We didn't need to. We fed them a virus that came in through their civilian network, smuggled via a fake entertainment stream designed to look like a human reality series. Once downloaded, the AI woke up, mimicked their native code, and shut down their entire outer defense ring in 4 minutes. They never saw it coming. We dropped into squads, 36 soldiers, all ghost, by the time the Tari even noticed. The spire was gone, blown from within by its own power core. It lit up their sky like a second sun. That was our message. You're not safe, not here, not anywhere. The Tari scrambled their fleets. I watched their patrol ships leap from system to system, flailing and panicked, trying to intercept us. But the burn fleet wasn't where they looked. We were already in their atmosphere. And this time we weren't targeting military. We were going for the bloodline. The Tari governed through dynasties. Monarchical bloodlines tied to ancient houses. Their home world had 7 palaces, 1 for each ruling house, protected, sacred, untouchable. We hit all 7 in under 12 hours. Not with troops, but with pinpoint drops. Neutron bombs designed not to destroy infrastructure, but to erase genetics. It sterilized each site, killed every living thing in the radius, left the buildings standing, their libraries, their vaults, their flags untouched. Only the bloodlines were gone. And with them, the future of their civilization. They begged for talks. Within 18 hours, their High Regent tried to send a message through the Council's emergency channel. We didn't answer. We didn't need to because while they begged, I was already landing on territory. Their holy city, their equivalent of Earth's Jerusalem, Mecca, and Vatican rolled into one. I didn't come with an army, just a drop pod, just me, and one backpack of explosives. When I stepped onto their sacred ground, I didn't shoot. I walked deliberate and slow, past panicked civilians, past guards who didn't know whether to shoot or kneel, past their temples and shrines and prayer banners flapping in confusion. They had never imagined a human would get this far, let alone walk right into their heart. I reached the sanctum of origin, a massive structure carved from 1,000-year-old black stone. Inside was their soul vault, a relic chamber containing the genetic codes of every Tari house, past and present, the reincarnation vault. If you destroyed that, you didn't just kill them, you ended them. I set the charges and stood there for 5 minutes alone, staring at what they worshipped, not because I felt guilt, but because I wanted to remember. I wanted to remember the face of extinction. The Council always said humanity was too emotional, too unstable, that our grief made us volatile. They were right, because grief turns into wrath, and wrath writes history. When I pressed the detonator, the explosion didn't just tear through the sanctum, it rippled through the culture. Within hours, Tari morale collapsed, fleets deserted, commanders surrendered without firing, entire cities opened their gates. Not because they feared our firepower, but because they knew we weren't conquering or invading. We were a racing dot by the time Earth Command reached out, panicked and scrambling. To control the narrative, it was too late. We had done what they never dared. We had broken a Council species permanently, and they hated us for it. Not because we were wrong, but because we proved they could have done it all along. I returned to Luna for a hearing. They dressed it up like a court-martial, cameras, judges, suits, hushed tones about war crimes and council law. It was all theater. They needed a scapegoat, someone to point to and say, he went rogue. We didn't approve this, so I let them try. I sat there, eyes empty, staring through them as they read out their prepared speeches. When they asked if I had anything to say in my defense, I stood, hands behind my back, and looked them in the eyes. You didn't deserve the burn fleet. You begged for a seat at the table while they murdered children. And when we hit back, you wept, not for the dead, but for your reputation. I did what Earth needed, what you were too scared to do. You want to punish someone, start by punishing yourselves. Then I walked out. No one stopped me. Not one handcuff. Not one soldier moved, because deep down they knew I wasn't the villain. I was the mirror, and they couldn't stand their reflection. The Council issued a formal condemnation a week later, called the Tari campaign unjustifiable, said Earth had violated interstellar norms, but their fleets never moved. Their sanctions never came because fear had a new name, and it wasn't Earth. It was me. They called me a war criminal, a terrorist, a human extremist. But in the fringe systems, they called me something else. Protector, Avenger. The last man the aliens will ever cross. I knew it would happen eventually. No empire collapses from outside. It dies from the inside, poisoned by fear, guilt, and the kind of weakness that calls itself progress. After Tari Prime, Earth wasn't just feared. It was divided. Half the world celebrated. The other half choked on shame. Universities protested. Diplomats resigned. Journalists painted me as a genocidal warlord in armor. It didn't matter that the Tari struck first. It didn't matter that we had warned them. All they saw were ash clouds and broken cathedrals. Humanity had survived, but the soul of it was bleeding. Back on Luna, I watched it unfold. Protest outside Terran Command, chanting my name like I was some dictator out of a failed history lesson. Civil rights groups calling the burn fleet the death of our moral legacy. Even within the ranks, the fractures began to show. Some officers started refusing orders, not loudly, just quiet disobedience. A missed directive, a hesitated launch, engineers losing files, pilots requesting transfers away from ghost ships. Cowards, the lot of them. Not because they feared death, but because they feared responsibility. You see, it's easy to hold a rifle when you believe you're the good guy. Harder when the rifle's covered in the ashes of alien children. General Adrek was gone, stripped of rank. Last I heard, he took exile in the Martian Highlands. Diplomatic command collapsed a week after the Council cut ties permanently. Earth had become the pariah state of the galaxy, rich in fear, bankrupt in allies. So who stepped in? The Parliament of Reclamation, bureaucrats, suits, civilians who had never seen blood up close. They restructured the Earth Military Accord into something more accountable, less violent. They made me the example. I was called to a hearing in Geneva. No cameras this time. No media. Just a cold room with polished steel walls and a table so clean it felt surgical. 5 faces sat across from me. The Reform Council. Not a single one had dirt under their fingernails. Commander, the woman in the center said, "You've become a destabilizing force in Earth's new political alignment." I didn't answer. She folded her hands. "The Council wants peace. The Council is dead," I said flatly. The man to her left cleared his throat. "You've led unauthorized military campaigns, violated countless codes, committed, survived," I snapped. "That's what you're trying to say." The woman leaned forward. "You've made us monsters." I stared at her for a long time. Then I spoke softly. "No. I just showed you what kind of monsters we already were. They revoked my access codes, seized burn. Fleet Command recalled every ghost ship back to the dockyards under the pretense of refitting. I watched from orbit as everything I built, every safeguard, every protocol, every defense, was dismantled by people who didn't have the spine to survive their own victories. They called it peace. But peace built on denial isn't peace. It's rotting flesh beneath a silk glove. They offered me exile, voluntary withdrawal from public military engagement. They said. I declined. So they made me disappear. They didn't use a cell. They used a colony on the far side of Neptune's orbit, an old terraforming station once used for atmospheric test. Cold, remote, forgotten, that became my cage. No trial, no charges. Just a reclassification, retired, under protective observation. They gave me a room, a data terminal with no external link, and meals delivered by drones, a gilded coffin. And still, I waited because men like me don't die in shadows. We wait for the next war. It came sooner than they expected. 6 months. Into my exile, I received a signal unauthorized, buried in a systems check on the hydroprocessor unit, encrypted with a cipher I hadn't seen in years. It was from Corin, one of my old squad techs. The message was short. Earth is falling from the inside. They're building a fleet, not to fight aliens, to fight us. A purge is coming. That was the day I stopped waiting. I broke out the next morning. Didn't need violence, just a few bypass lines of code, a fake life support alert, and a short train shuttle left accidentally fueled. They thought they buried me, but all they did was give me time to sharpen the knife. I made contact with the remains of the burned fleet. What was left of it anyway? For ships, skeleton crews, men and women who hadn't forgotten what we stood for. They hadn't gone soft. They had gone underground, waiting for the right voice to pull them back together. My voice. We didn't broadcast our return. No dramatic landings. No declarations. We started by removing key reclamation officials quietly, without blood. A corrupted supply admiral retired after an anonymous leak exposed his backroom deals. A propaganda director vanished in a shuttle accident. No fingerprints, just silence and fear. But Earth Command wasn't blind. They saw the shadows moving again. So they lit a fire. They launched Project Rainfall, a fleet built not for defense, but internal control. AI-piloted enforcer ships, surveillance drones woven into every corner of human space, and a new Black Ops task force called the Aegis Corps, made up of Earthborn soldiers trained to hunt down traitors like me. They came for me on Archon 6, mining station deep in the asteroid belt. 6 of them, armored and trained. I killed 5. Spared the 6th. Let him crawl back with the message. Tell them the monster they created is wide awake. That's where we are now. Not at war with aliens, not fighting for survival, but on the edge of civil collapse. One side clinging to peace built on bones, the other refusing to let the galaxy forget what it did to us. There's no council to fear. Now, there's only Earth, and Earth has to decide what it is, the victim or the executioner. And so began the civil war that would tear humanity apart from within. The very strength that had made us fear to cross the galaxy became the weapon we turned on ourselves. In trying to forget what we had become, we lost sight of what we were fighting to preserve. The story of Earth's rise to power was written in alien blood. The story of its fall would be written in our own.